Let's start off talking about some issues. At the top of your website, you have "I want you to be free." What do you mean by that? I mean, that's one of those big phrases that hardly anybody could be opposed to, but what does it mean to you?
Well, it's interesting. You're absolutely right. Hardly anybody could be opposed to it, and yet no Republican or Democrat is offering it to you. I want you to be free to live your life as you want to live it, not as Al Gore or George Bush thinks is best for you. I want you to be free to raise your children by your values, not the values of bureaucrats who are trying to create a brave new world. I think every dollar you earn should be yours to spend, to save, to give away as you see fit. You're the one who gets up every morning and goes to work for 8 or 10 or 12 hours a day. Why should the politicians take that money and then let you have whatever crumbs are left over when they're done spending what they want to spend? You should be telling them how much you want to give them.
So, Harry Browne, does that mean that libertarians are opposed to all taxes or any kind of taxes?
Well, all I can tell you is the only good tax is a dead tax. But as long as we have a government, we will have taxation. But for 120 years, our federal government got by without any income tax at all because it was not involved in education and healthcare and law enforcement and welfare and all these areas that were never meant to be the province of the federal government.
But we're very much involved in those things now, and some would say we've gone too far to ever go back to the way we were 100 or so years ago.
That's unfortunate that some people feel that way, because that's just giving up. The fact is, the federal government has no success to show for its adventures into education. Education started going downhill in the worst way in the 1960s when the federal government moved in. We had the best health care system in the world. Anybody could get low-cost health insurance, even people with pre-existing conditions, until the federal government moved in the 1960s. Law enforcement has gone downhill with the war on drugs and all these other things that the federal government has no business in whatsoever. Welfare became a national scandal when the war on poverty started. All of these things are the result of the federal government invading areas where it doesn't belong. And I don't want people to give up. I want people to raise their sights and dream about a better America, a truly free America. The land of the free is what America was, and it was a distinctive country in the world. Different from Germany and France and Sweden and all these other countries where the politicians made all your decisions for you and knew what was best for you. But now that's what we have in America. George Bush, Al Gore, Ralph Nader, and Pat Buchanan are arguing over one thing. Which one is best qualified to run your life? Well, I don't think I can run your life. I think you can run your life.
Let's take a specific issue, Social Security, something that concerns a lot of Americans, young and old. What would your position be?
It's a national swindle that you put into it all your life. You're putting 15% of your income into Social Security, either directly taken from your paycheck or taken from your employer.
So how will you specifically change it if elected
Well,
president?
first of all, realize that when you put that money in all of your life, they don't put it aside for your retirement. They take it and spend it. They spend it on other people. They spend it on monuments to themselves. They may spend it propping up the Russian ruble for another hour, but they will never put it in an account with your name on it. And no plan of George Bush's or Al Gore is going to change that. What I want to do is to sell off federal assets that the government shouldn't own, use the proceeds to buy private lifetime annuities for your mother, your father, your grandparents, the people dependent on Social Security today, so we know they're safe. They're no longer dependent on the politicians.
Privatizing Social Security.
Absolutely, and immediately and completely, you should be free of that 15% Social Security tax. Not over 50 or 60 years the way the Republicans have got it laid out, but immediately you should be free of that. So then maybe you put 5% of your income in a bank savings account or whatever you think is best, and you will come out way, way ahead of what Social Security promises.
Military spending. George W. Bush makes no bones about the fact that if elected president, that he will beef up the military.
Sure.
He feels that the military is troubled now and is not as strong as it should be. You agree or disagree?
I disagree almost across the board. Conservative politicians are just like liberal politicians. They think that you throw money at something, it's going to cause things to be better. If it's a good program, something they believe in, then there's never enough money. Must have more money, more money, more money. I mean, the liberals did this with the war on poverty, and it has failed. The conservatives have done it with the war on drugs, and it has failed. They've done it with the military. We have the strongest national offense in the world. We can annihilate any country in the world. We can bully any countries into settling their disputes on our terms, but we have a very weak national defense. We cannot protect this country from any two-bit dictator who gets his hands on a nuclear missile, like Saddam Hussein or somebody like that.
You feel as though we're playing policeman to the world, and would you bring many of those troops that we have stationed in different places around the country back here?
All of them. All they do is breed resentments to the United States. All they do is to breed resentments on the part of terrorists who want to come over here and bomb the World Trade Center or something to prove to us that we can't run their lives.
That won't leave us vulnerable on an international level?
We're vulnerable now. We can't defend this country now. All we can do is run around trying to intimidate other people and scare them into not attacking us. But if they actually did attack us, they could destroy Detroit in a few seconds with a nuclear missile. What we need is a missile defense and some kind of border patrol to protect us from those rampaging Canadians when they come running down from Windsor. But if we have that, then we don't need to be running the world. We don't need to have troops all over the world trying to police the world.
Right. Just as a point of reference, do you not trust Canadians?
I love Canadians. I lived in Vancouver for 5 years, and that's a joke about Windsor, but
okay.
but not a joke about the missile defense. And the way to get a missile defense is not to turn it over to the Department of Defense, who has had it for 17 years and $100 billion and accomplished nothing. We should put up a reward of, say, $25 billion to the first private company that can develop a working missile defense. And that way the taxpayers won't be out a dime until we actually have the defense, but I'll bet we'll have it in 3 or 4 years.
All right, Harry Browne, we have to get to a commercial break. We'll be right back with more questions and answers. We'll talk about education and whatever else we can get in the time that we have left with Harry Browne. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Hey, did you cancel the paper?
You bet.
You stopped the mail?
Absolutely.
Did you remember to turn on the alarm?
Totally forgot.
ADT's home monitoring technology is so advanced, you can turn it on from any phone, anywhere, and in seconds your house will be covered with a high-technology blanket of protection. Call now and get ADT's sophisticated burglary system installed for as little as $99. You could also save up to 20% off your basic homeowner's insurance. ADT's Advanced Monitoring Center is staffed by skilled professionals, always on full alert and ready to send help in seconds. That's why ADT helps protect more homes and families than any other security company in America. Call now and get the ADT burglary system from $99 installed, plus up to 20% off your homeowner's insurance. Get the power of ADT.
I give out more of these than my autograph. I say, take your car to Mako. When you check out our great prices, you'll wonder how we do it. Our economical ambassador paint service is only $189. Mako is good, fast, and a great value. It's Mako for makeovers. A job well done by the #1 player in auto painting and body work. Call 1-888-MAKO-USA.
He was a dyed-in-the-wool suit and tie guy, but the interview he had the next day was with an internet company, which meant suits might not be the best option. His question, what was? There are some stores that will sell the same look to everyone. We'd rather see what works best for you. After all, you're not like everyone else, and we won't treat you that way.
Casual know-how at the Men's Warehouse.
You're gonna like the way you look. I guarantee it.
Dr. Laura speaks her mind.
I have the answer.
Kids shooting kids right in our schools. Next, Dr. Laura.
Monday at 10 on WXYZ 7.
We're back with Harry Browne, presidential candidate representing the Libertarian Party. Let's talk about education. You've done well individually as a financial advisor, author of several best-selling books. But when you look at your own background, you admit right in your bio that you graduated from high school, you only went to college for 2 weeks, and then you went on from there. some would say, okay, Harry Browne, with that type of background, what are your ideas on education, and can you really be the best spokesperson for where education needs to go in America?
Well, parents are the best spokespersons. I don't believe I should decide what education should be in America. I don't believe George Bush or Al Gore or Pat Buchanan or Ralph Nader should decide. I think parents should decide. I want to get the federal government completely out of education, because that's when education started going downhill, was when the federal government moved in. When I was growing up, parents didn't complain about the poor schooling, but they certainly do now everywhere. Incidentally, I might mention that my ideas on all these issues are at my website at harrybrowne.org, and I know we're only going to be able to touch on a few of them here, but anybody can go to harrybrowne.org and get whatever information they need. But I want to get the federal government completely out of education. I want to repeal the income tax so that you can put your child in any school you want with your own money, private school, religious school, homeschooling, without having to beg the state for a voucher, without having to plead with the Board of Education.
Well, and that's what I want to get some specifics on, because people are sitting out there saying, okay, well, where is he on charter schools? Where is he on voucher programs? For, against?
I'm against anything trying to make the federal government solve the problems that the federal government has created. The idea is to get the federal government out of it.
How will you get competition into education, which is something that many of the politicians, many of the candidates say has to happen in order for us to do well and better?
There won't be competition in education if we have vouchers, because the politicians will set up rules for schools to get those vouchers, and those rules will be exactly like the government schools. And within 10 years, 5 years at the most, really, private schools will look just like government schools, and there'll no longer be any kind of competition. That's what's happened with colleges, with Pell Grants, student loans, with GI Bill. All of these things have made private colleges into politically correct institutions that are indistinguishable from government schools.
Handguns, would you crack down on them in order to get a hold on what has been a crime wave problem in many respects? Many cities, many big cities?
The biggest source of violence, gun violence in America, are the gun laws. The gun laws are not respected by criminals. A criminal will not buy his gun in a way that involves registration, licensing, waiting periods, trigger locks, or any of these things. They simply buy their guns in the underworld, or they steal them from you. The only people affected by the gun laws are people like you and me, who are deprived of the ability to defend ourselves. So now that we are sitting ducks for the criminals, you have mass shootings, you have all of these problems that never existed before, because people are defenseless and no longer be able to fight back. The greatest protection you could have, even if you don't own a gun yourself, is the knowledge of the criminal that people in your neighborhood do own a gun, and therefore if they enter your house, they may be facing somebody who could fight back. And that's the greatest protection that you can have. 911 is not going to get there in time to protect you.
In the amount of time we have left, a huge issue is health care.
Sure.
How would you go about changing the health care system?
Get the federal government out. Senior citizens have been swindled by Medicare. They now pay twice.
How would you get prescription drug costs down? Many seniors say that they cannot afford them. They're running up their credit cards.
Of course they can't afford it.
How would you
You know why they can't afford it? Because they're paying more for health care now than they did before Medicare began. Even allowing for inflation, they're paying over twice as much as they did. They can't get prescription drugs because the federal government makes the pharmaceutical companies spend so much time jumping through federal hoops. They can't get it because health insurance companies have been loaded up with so many mandates.
So how do you change that?
Get the federal government out of it. It has made an absolute mess of what was.
And you would totally trust the pharmaceutical companies and the private?
No, I don't trust anybody. But pharmaceutical companies will compete with each other, and they will have to provide the service and the low cost and the effectiveness that is necessary in order to outdo their competitors. Look at the computer industry. I don't trust the computer companies, and yet computers cost a fraction of what they did 10 years ago. I don't trust the computer companies, but they're far more effective than they were 10 years ago. I don't trust the computer companies, but they're far more user-friendly than they were. But compare that with healthcare or education that are controlled by government, and everything is far worse than it was 10 years ago. Everything is more expensive, less effective, less user-friendly. Let's get the government out of this. Raise your sights. Look for a better world than what we have now. Don't try to decide who should run your life, Al Gore or George Bush. Decide that you can run your life if the government would only let you, if the government will only get out of your life.
Harry Browne, what's your bigger priority, to become president or to just increase the number of people that belong to the Libertarian Party?
Well, if I could win the election this time, I would be ready and able to put into practice the things that would be necessary so that you could be free to run your life as you see fit. It's unlikely that that's going to happen this year, but
Is the media to blame?
Nobody's to blame. We're a small party. We're growing very, very rapidly. But what we have to do is to get to the point where we are respected by the media. Now, the most important thing that can happen this year is for me to get as many votes as possible. If you vote for me, if you vote for me, if people all over America vote for me and I get into the millions of votes, then everybody will pay attention in the future and we have a chance of having a libertarian America within just a few years.
Quick final questions. You will not be involved in the presidential debates, the ones that are televised.
No, but they're
Do you
probably...
feel that is inherently unfair?
Well,
undemocratic?
it's the way it is. The Democrats and Republicans control the government. So they monopolize the debates. They pass ballot access laws that make it very difficult for third parties to get on the ballot. They pass campaign finance laws that make it very difficult for a third party to grow. All of these things are not designed to make things fair. They are designed to protect the Republicans and Democrats in power, which is another reason to take power away from the federal government. It will always be misused. It will always be abused. The problem is not the abuse of power. It is the power to abuse.
Harry Browne, that'll have to be the last word. Thank you for coming in. It's a pleasure talking with you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Hope to talk with you again in the future. Good luck on the campaign trail.
Thank you.
And we'll be back with more guests in just a moment. Stay with us.